can do, support charities, but anything to do with cancer research, you're wasting your money because they're just going straight to the pharmaceuticals for research to make toxic drugs like Gardasil. They'll tell you, we've got a magic bullet, there's a magic bullet coming and we're only 10 or 5 or 15 years away from the cure of cancer. Just keep giving us money, keep supporting, keep researching. Now, there are a lot of good charities out there to do with cancer, like the Kids Cancer Foundation. By all means, support those. Starlight, they're all great because they're looking after the kids. Make-A-Wish Foundation, which I think Tom Emanuel supports. You know, support those because they're not necessarily supporting research, they're supporting the kids and the victims with cancer and helping them deal with it. But anything to do with cancer research, stay away from them, don't support them. So basically the pharmaceuticals really, they're just going to spin lie after lie to seduce the entire world. Now, in the US, these days, you can't watch TV without seeing a TV advertisement for some kind of drug. And they're all, I'm glad that I don't watch TV, I haven't for a long time. I don't know if they've got them here, but I'm pretty sure they don't. I'm glad in Australia we don't have those drug ads because drugs in America, in terms of prescription medicines, they're just part of everyday life. Just about every American these days takes them. So every few years we hear, whether it's the news, whether it's in print media, whether it's in the newspapers, the big pharma, they justify their billions of dollars spent in their research by making promises. All have the same promises. New breakthrough discovery. In 10 or 20 years' time, we may have the cure. Just keep the research dollars coming. If you have a look at the Time magazine on the screen there, it says, Time, there is new ammunition against the war in cancer. Cancer, these are the magic bullets, and it talks about a revolutionary new pill like Glivec to combat cancer by targeting only diseased cells. Is this the breakthrough we've been waiting for? And this magazine, by the way, is dated 2001, 7 years ago, and I don't know, have you heard about these magic bullets that treat cancer? I haven't. Just going to read to you page 54, which I thought was interesting. It says, 8 years ago, there were 124 medicines, so that would have been in the early 90s, 124 medicines in the research pipeline being tested as potential anti-cancer agents. Today, there are 402. So it's 402 drugs back in 2001 with potentially showing promising signs that it could treat cancer. Today, you can't put a figure on it. There's that many drugs being tested for supposedly as a cancer cure. Now, there are a few doctors and scientists who are not afraid to stand for the truth. And I just want to read you some of the quotes from doctors who actually apply the cancer treatments and have actually come out and told it really how it is. Oncologist Albert Braverman, MD, Professor of Oncology at the State University of New York, wrote in 1991 that no disseminated neoplasm, that is cancer, incurable in 1975 is curable today. Many medical oncologists recommend chemotherapy for virtually any tumour with a hopefulness undiscouraged by almost invariable failure. Alan C. Nixon, PhD, he was the past president of the American Chemical Society, wrote, as a chemist trained to interpret data, it is incomprehensible to me that physicians can ignore the clear evidence that chemotherapy does much, much more harm than good. Dr. Ralph Moss writes, effective cancer treatment is a matter of definition. The FDA defines an effective drug as one which achieves a 50% or more reduction in tumour size for 28 days. In the vast majority of cases, there is absolutely no correlation between shrinking tumours for 28 days and the cure of the cancer or the extension of life. When the cancer patient hears the doctor say effective, he or she thinks, and logically so, that effective means it cures cancer. But all it means is temporary tumour shrinkage. So generally what that's saying is when a doctor tells you that there's a new drug or a new trial that effectively treats cancer, all they're saying is that it will blast a tumour, it'll reduce a tumour. And to make no mistake, radiation and chemotherapy will kill tumours. It'll blast them and it'll put them down. But as we're going to find out, the tumour's not the problem. Now, what do mainstream doctors generally think about chemotherapy? I mean, if you would ask your doctor, what are your thoughts on chemotherapy? What do you think about it? And it's interesting to find out, back in 1986, the McGill Cancer Research Centre, They sent a questionnaire to 118 doctors who treated lung cancer. More than 3/4 of them actually recruited patients and carried out trials of toxic drugs. So these were doctors that were heavily involved in chemotherapy and trialling it and finding people and writing people up to actually trial the drugs for lung cancer. And they were asked to imagine that if they themselves had cancer and were asked which of the 6 current trials they themselves would choose, what would you choose? What would you select? Of the 79 that responded, of the 118, 64 said they would not consent to be in a trial containing cisplatin, which is a common chemotherapy drug. 58, which is 73%, found all the drugs and all the trials unacceptable. And their reasons were simply the ineffectiveness of chemotherapy and its unacceptable degree of toxicity. So you've got drugs and doctors that are actually giving the chemotherapy drugs, they're administering them, but they themselves, the majority say, if I had cancer, I'm not going to subject myself to the same treatment I give out. And, it's basically because they're ineffective and their unacceptable degree of toxicity. Now, here's an Australian report with the finding that the benefits of chemotherapy may have been oversold and that it's been found that chemotherapy is effective only to the tune of 2%. And, my question is, and it's taken you 35 years to find that out. This was printed in 2005. But if you do your research and you look into it, you'll find that chemotherapy, doesn't matter which research or trial, paper or scientific study that you find, it's generally only 2 to 3% effective. And whenever you do get the occasional rare claim that it's 40%, if you actually look at how they did the maths, you'll find that they did quite a bit of dancing with the figures to get to such high percentages. A lot of the time you'll find they use the word relative, not absolute, and they use relative figures. They say, well, we would expect that of these 100 people in the test on this particular drug, we'd expect 2 to get cancer. Let's say only 1 does. Then they'll say, well, 1 out of the 2 is 50%. We'll make it effective 50%. And that's what they'll report. Relative effectiveness of 50%. But that means that 2 out of 100 people were only benefited from the trial, and that's wrong. At this point, we're going to have a look at a video. It runs for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to come back and we're going to look at the more positive side, which is called Cancer Doesn't Scare Me Anymore. If you could play part 1 of the video, and then we're just going to spend a bit of time looking at God's way. We've heard enough of man's way, we're going to look at God's way to treat cancer.